Welcome to Microsoft Social Engagement Module 4, Building Searches and Gathering Posts. My name is Julie Yack. For our module today, we'll be discussing our search options. We'll go through steps, types, languages, and a few other things. We'll go through the anatomy of a search, where we'll talk about the all-up concepts as well as the individual search rules and items. We'll talk through planning and using your quota, and we'll go through some helpful hints where we cover strategy and keywords. So first, let's dive into a few of our search options. So your basic steps to build a search include things like naming your search, choosing your search language and your sources and the language of those sources. You'll go through adding rules with keywords, inclusions, and exclusions. You'll have a chance to preview your results as well as the estimated quota that they're going to take up. And then you'll have the chance to save it. As part of your search, you'll be required to use a search category. As you see, there are many that are built in here, from competitors to contacts to your products, but then you have the chance to make custom ones as well. Our search topics are our collection of our saved searches. You can use this view here to have an all-up view of the quantity of posts coming in, as well as which topics or categories might be the hot topics of the day. In your search, you'll define your filters, which are our sources and our languages. And for our languages, as we've discussed previously, we have a few different choices, as you see. We have choices for our UI language so that our users can participate in the language that's most comfortable for them. In addition to those UI languages, we have our sentiment detection languages, which gives us all of these as well as Arabic. And then we have languages for post gathering, so that when we're defining our searches and we go out and get that information, it can be in any of those above languages as well as these on the list down below. Language can be a very important component for your searches. Your customers in Turkey might be very happy and you'll see results with happy sentiment. But if your Finnish customers are unhappy, we can learn about that too and address and resolve that. So let's go into a demonstration here where we'll do some language settings. For languages, we have a few different places where we select different language choices for how we interact with the application. Here we are on my personal preferences page where I am choosing my screen language. So these are the screen languages available that already have the translations and the experience readily available. We've got the default English selected. Then we've also got some global language settings that we would like to set up. The default screen language we're going to keep as English. We have search languages that we can add. So let's add a couple here. Let's add Dutch and French and Japanese, and we'll save that. And then once we have that saved, we can look at our search setup defaults. And then these languages will become available to us now as default. So if we'd like to save our users some trouble when they're building the searches that they build, then we can have these default languages set up on their behalf. So now we'll go into the anatomy of the search, the different moving parts and the different moving components. So as previously mentioned, we have search topics. There are no limits on the quantity. You can have as many of these saved search topics as you'd like. This gives you a chance to monitor your post counts. You can see where those high value, high volume items are. And you'll see each one of these has a category. Categories are required, but out of the box, we have a category called uncategorized. So that is the parking place for items where they don't really have a category. Our search topic settings is a very busy place, as you'll see. And when I go into a demonstration in a few minutes, you'll be able to absorb that a little bit better. But we'll start at the top with our good name that we need. You need to save the search with a name where not only you can understand what to expect from that search and the results, but your coworkers as well. Anyone else who may be using the system needs to have a name that makes sense to them. You'll choose a system category here or make your own. You'll see the record owner here is the person who obviously has owned and built this search, but that also determines who has access to the details, who has access to editing rights. You'll build and add your individual rules here, and we'll go into that in just a moment. And your search topic is the union of all of those rules. So you can build as many rules as you'd like, and then they all roll up to make that search topic. So our search rules, you also hear them called queries, have many different moving parts as well. So on the left-hand side, you see where we did our search topic settings, which we just discussed. But then we have our filter. And our filter is the list of sources and the languages. And as a reminder, those sources can be set up. Sometimes you'll have 8 sources. Sometimes it'll be the blogs, the forums, Reddit, and so on. But you can also then add sources such as Twitter, which will then add another item to our filter. Then the languages you see here are the ones that have been defined by our system administrators. Then we move on to keywords. Keywords act as an or collection of items. So we, in this search mentioned here, we would like to see things returned that have Dynamics 365 or Dynamics CRM or Dynamics AX or Dynamics Operations. You have a maximum number of keywords per rule of 15. Then we move on to our inclusions. Our inclusions become an and. So we need to match a keyword and an inclusion. So it can be any keyword with any inclusion. Again, you have the maximum inclusions here of 15. And inclusions here are scoped. So are we looking for a headline? Are we looking for a paragraph? Are we looking for a post? Any of those matches will do those hits for us as we define that scope. And now we have exclusions. They are just what they mean. If this exclusion shows up in any capacity, and the scope on these is the entire post, when those exclusions show up in any capacity, then that post will no longer be shown on our results. It will no longer count toward our quota. We have the maximum number of exclusions per search is 25. And what this does is it narrows our keyword search. So if we need to pull some things out to help give us a more specific view of our desired results, we can do that here. Then we have, as I mentioned, Twitter rules. Once you have selected the Twitter option, then you'll be given message types as a choice. So you can choose public items, you can choose replies, mentions, any of those items that you would like to select here. Additionally, this is where you can choose to follow a specific named author. So if you have an influencer that you'd like to follow their tweets, regardless of the content and regardless of whether that specific tweet is relevant to you, you'd like to follow everything they say, you can do that here. When it comes to our Facebook rules, authentication is required. So you're not gathering any posts of any variety from Facebook if you are not an authenticated user in some capacity. You'll have different tokens and setups for interactions and for acquisition. So if you just want to read things versus if you want to interact on a page, and then that gives you the chance to gather and reply. We also have the chance to add custom sources. Our custom sources can be virtually anything that has an RSS or an Atom feed. And once we've added those become one of the items that we can choose from when we're defining our rule. So to add that custom source, you navigate to the custom source area, you give it that logical name, you give it your initials, or if you have some other naming convention that your organization would like to use, you can use that here. And then you add the RSS or Atom feed URL. Once you have saved that, it will then become available to you as a rule. And then finally here in this area, we'll talk about our blocked content. It is exactly what it means. If you have specific hyper-offensive words that you'd like to block, then you can block that here. If you have specific domains, which oftentimes are considered spam for you, you can add those here as well. It's important to recognize that this blocked content will delete posts 4 hours after you add these terms. If you are going in and you decide that you don't want to have that happen, you can change these and edit them within that 4-hour time frame, and the post can be saved. But once they are gone, they are gone. That data acquisition will stop and the acquired posts will be gone. So let's do a demonstration here and see the moving parts of a search query in action. So let's build a search. We could get there either through our search setup or right here, clicking the gears to head to the search setup. You'll see we have here our categories, and the ability to add a category. We have the search topics that we've already got set up, and we have our quota here that has our estimated monthly posts that we're going to have. So let's go ahead and add a search topic here. Let's name it Fabricam. And let's categorize this as one of our competitors. We don't have any rules yet. You'll see that I am the owning user. So let's add a rule. We'll make it a keywords rule. Let's review the sources that we have. I'd like to for sure get news and blogs and Reddit, and maybe we'll have something on that custom site that I've already put on there. And we're good to go with languages. So for our keywords, let's add some keywords for our bank. Now let's add Fabricam as our inclusion, and we want to make sure that anything that's in the post that says Fabricam we include. And let's go ahead and exclude Woodgrove. So right now for this, we're not going to be very interested in whether or not it's a comparison between us and our competitors. We just want information strictly about our competitors for this rule. So now we'll click continue, and what we're going to get is a quota check and also a sample of what posts might be coming in based on this search criteria. And then from there, we can save this and add it to our collection, and it will begin to curate and collect that content. So you'll see that we'll make it within our quota without a problem. Gives us our preview. Here are our selections that we've made. We can add more rules if we'd like, and the content that is being curated will be the collection from all of the rules combined. So let's go ahead and save this and begin curating that content. So now quota, all of these posts that we are gathering all have a cost associated with them, and that's our quota. Your organization will have an amount of quota that you are assigned and available to use. Then you can always acquire more if you'd like to have more. When you are saving that search, you will see a quota projection. You will see a monthly projection, and then have the opportunity to tweak that and edit the things that you are gathering so that you can influence the amount of quota that's being used. So when you are building your searches and gathering this information, you want to be mindful of the quota that you are using. You can buy a virtually endless amount of quota, but to stay within your limits, you should be mindful of the search topic design so that it's gathering what you are expecting it to gather. You need to be aware of the fact that there may be some news that happens that would cause one of your searches to spike, which could practically overnight utilize all of the quota that you have. And you can make use of those inclusions and exclusions that we discussed to filter out some unwanted content so that you're using your quota for what you need it to do. So no matter how many searches a single item matches, the post will only ever count toward your quota one time. So to give you an example of that, here's a post that could be, I love my new bank, Contoso Bank, and I hate my old bank, Woodgrove Bank. Well, you could have a search on yourself, Contoso Bank, and you can have a search on yourself, Woodgrove Bank. So if this post comes in twice, matching each of those, it would still only count toward your quota once. You would see it once in the Contoso area showing positive sentiment, and you would see it once in the Woodgrove area showing negative sentiment. Here are some helpful hints to help round out those edges and make sure that your searches have the quality that you're looking for. So when you're using the keywords, be mindful that the search queries do not do any case matching whatsoever. Case matching is irrelevant to our searches. You're not getting any stemming. So for example, if you're trying to look up words about phone to be included in your searches, then you would need to have the word phone and phoned and phoning all included in your keywords. Some things that might be valuable to include could be common misspellings. And then again, those different morphologies of the same word, such as finance, financing, financier, and so on. So some tips and tricks and gotchas. We talked about the naming convention. Use those names that make sense across multiple users. So make sure when you're building those search topics, you use more than one query so you can build and extrapolate the information that you're hoping to find. And when you're trying to address an issue, you may be able to address it in many different ways. You may be able to have a couple of different search queries built that gather and refine the data. So strategies for using the different sources is make sure that you're using the channel that is relevant to the goal of your organization. If your organization really has no presence on any specific brand of social media, then don't necessarily be gathering information from that. Consider using multiple queries within a specific search so that you can cater to the source specific challenges. So that if you've got blogs and news in the same query, that's fine. But then make sure that you're using the inclusions and exclusions that matter. And when you are using those custom sources, you will need to explicitly add to the searches. It won't just be included automatically. So if you had searches already built, then you go in and add a custom source. You may need to go in and edit the saved searches that you already have to be including the information from that custom source. So other things to remember. Once you've gathered all this information, you can filter it more at the analytics phase. You can use the different widgets and items that we've been seeing and will continue to see to filter that information to make it something usable and actionable for you. Your quota will not roll over from month to month. So if you don't use all of your purchase quota in this month, you start over again at 0 at the beginning of the next month. So use it or lose it. Build those searches to make the most use of your quota. If you don't collect the posts when they are generated, you can't go back and get historical information later. So when we talked about that spike based on news, that works for and against you. If you make your searches so reserved or conservative that they don't get the extra information and you've missed that news event or that news cycle, you can't go back and get the information that you missed. And always keep in mind that sometimes bad words can mean good things. Many people use bad words for emphasis to express their happiness with a product or an offering, and those can mean things too. So before you start adding a bunch of exclusions with those bad words, consider that they may be for positive emphasis. So keep in mind that you don't need to solve the whole problem in a single search topic. We have many different ways and many different layering opportunities to get the results that we're hoping for. So you can build several, you can learn from them as you go, and you can solve the problem with a collection of searches. As a quick review for our module, we talked through our search options. We went through the steps and types and languages. We saw a demonstration of applying some of those languages. We did the anatomy of a search, and in that we reviewed the components and the rules and did a demonstration of that, where we also happened to see some of the quota that we could see and the projections and whatnot there. And then we went through some helpful hints where we talked through the different keyword options and your strategies. For this module, we've got hands-on for you as well, where you're going to set up and refine some searches. And then also you'll be adding some Dynamics 365 components where you're monitoring your accounts.